In this video, you're gonna learn the difference between startup sales and enterprise sales. And I'm gonna share with you my personal experience of working in Silicon Valley, working at Oracle, as well as a Y Combinator-backed startup. And you wanna make sure you watch this video until the end, because if you are someone who is considering a career in sales, or maybe you're just starting out, it might be a little confusing to know which type of organization you should join, like an enterprise or a startup. What's the difference between the two? So I'm gonna give you the inside scoop in this video. What's going on, everybody? Patrick here. Before we get started, make sure to give this video a like, subscribe, turn on notifications, and let's go ahead and dive in. So the first thing we're gonna talk about is enterprise sales. And when I talk about enterprise, I mean working at an enterprise company. That's gonna be someone like an Oracle, a Microsoft, a Salesforce. So I myself, after I graduated from University of Southern California, I actually joined Oracle for their class of program. So they basically hired 180 of us, fresh college graduates, and basically they trained us for 5 weeks and then we started on the job. And for me, I started as an account executive right off the bat, doing enterprise sales for human capital management, selling into hospitals with thousands of employees. Now, for my personal experience working at Oracle and talking to my friends, working at Oracle is kind of similar to working at Salesforce and Microsoft. Similar, different cultures, different company, but similar structure and how they run their sales team. So when you are working at Oracle, you don't really have a say on what product or service you're going to sell, what territory you're in. Someone else kind of decides that for you, whether it's a high-level salesperson like a sales director, VP of sales, or it could be the sales operations team who tries to figure out who should go where. So in a way, not in a negative way, but you're kind of like a gear in this machine, and you basically have to play your specific role to generate sales in that specific territory. And not always do you get to pick your territories, right? You can try to request it and get people to put in favors and things like that, but in reality, you don't always get to control these things because you're working at a larger company. And when it comes to selling, I would say that 50% of the time you are selling to your customers, and the other 50% of the time you are selling internally, right? So when you're working at Oracle or Salesforce or whatever, there's gonna be a lot of internal processes to actually get a deal done. For example, if you're selling to another company, before you can even give them a price, you might have to get approval internally, and you say, hey, I'm talking to this company, I want to give them a 30% discount, but just in case that they don't accept 30%, I want to also get approval for 40%, as backup. And then there's this whole process internally of how that actually happens and to get that approval before you can even sell anything. And of course, what comes with that is a lot of administrative work, a lot of paperwork, just so that basically every action that you take is recorded in some kind of database, so that high-level decision makers within your company, like the VP of sales and things like that, can see what's going on in the territory. So there's definitely more structure, but if you're able to navigate like internal politics and internal administrative work, then it's all right. And the good side of enterprise sales is that you really get to focus on whatever it is your job is. So if you are, let's say, an account executive, you're focused on closing, or if you are a sales development rep, all you're doing is focusing on generating meetings. So you don't have to think about improving the product or talking to HR or talking to this team and that team or talking to marketing. Really, you're just focused on selling your product, and everybody has their own individual roles. And because everybody has their own specific role, you get to learn how to work as a team, right? So as an account executive, when I was working at Oracle, it was my job to basically build a relationship with the customer and basically sell them, right? But when it comes to, let's say, the technicality of whatever product I'm selling, I don't know everything about the technical. So there's a technical guy that would bring on the call. Sales consultant, bring him on the call, right? So I don't have to do everything all by myself. I gotta focus on what I'm good at, which is building the relationship and closing deals. And I'll bring different people depending on what we need for that specific situation. So it's very clear on what you should be doing on a day-to-day basis, which for a lot of people, that's maybe what they want, because they don't want to think about all these different parts of the business. Maybe they only want to focus on one specific thing and be good at that. And another really good thing about enterprise sales is that once you work at a large brand name and you do well there, like an Oracle, Salesforce, Microsoft, it's very easy to jump and go to another company with another big name, right? So if you worked at Oracle, it's not that hard to get a job at Google or Facebook or whatever it is, right? Because at the end of the day, it's really just enterprise sales. And if you understand how to do that in one place, going anywhere else is pretty much the same thing. And also, if you want to, let's say, work at a medium-sized business later or a startup later, it's very easy for you to go from like an Oracle to a small startup, because They want that kind of experience. They want that brand name in a salesperson. So it's a lot more easier to start at the top and then, pretty much go anywhere you want once you get the brand name. But I will say, if you do well in enterprise sales, it doesn't always mean you're gonna do well in startup sales, because it's kind of different. Even though you're selling, the velocity of startup sales is a lot more faster, and you have to do so many different things, which we're gonna talk about right now. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about startup sales. So when I say startups, for this video, I'm talking about companies with, let's say, 50 employees or less, and maybe their sales team has like less than 10 people, okay? But obviously, working at a company with 50 people versus 5 people is gonna be a completely different experience, but I'm kinda gonna bucket them together, just to simplify this video. So in general, if you are working at a startup, it's a lot more faster paced because, people don't know who you are. You don't have a brand name, right? So essentially you're a nobody. Maybe you have funding, but nobody knows who you are. And you're basically reaching out to all these people who are doing marketing, and you're trying to convince someone who doesn't know who you are to buy your products and services. So what comes with that is it's a little more difficult to do because there's not that immediate trust. And so during the sales call, you have to really build rapport with the person and get them to see why you bring so much value and why they should actually pay you for your products and services. And sometimes when you're working at a startup, it's kind of like building a plane while you're flying it, right? So in enterprise tech world, when you're doing sales, the plane is already built. So you're like a gear in a machine and you just have to keep it going, right? But when you're at a startup, you're like building all the systems within the sales process while you are selling. So everything is gonna be broken, right? The way people send emails is gonna be broken. Nobody's gonna be using the CRM, and everyone's gonna be using Excel sheets, and that's broken. So there's gonna be a lot of broken parts that don't really work in the sales process, which might be frustrating for a lot of salespeople. But if you're someone that thrives in that kind of environment, and you're someone that wants to learn how to build systems so other people can use them, well, startup sales is gonna be very beneficial for you to have an opportunity to be a leader if you put in the extra time. And as you can kind of tell, when you're doing startup sales, you have to literally wear many hats. Whereas in enterprise sales, you're just focusing on selling. If you're working at a startup, you might have to, get customer feedback and tell marketing and be like, hey, this guy said this, you need to change your marketing so we can get more leads. Or you might hear something from the customer and they're asking for a feature. You might go to the engineering team. You say, hey guys, these guys are asking for this feature. Can we build it, right? And for startup sales, if you're able to find those insights when you have conversations with your clients and then bring them to the rest of your team to improve the company, well, that's where you're gonna bring a lot of value. But as you can see, doing that is a lot of work outside of just selling. It's actually improving the company. So that's a really rewarding experience when you work at a startup, because you're not only learning how to sell and getting that experience, but you're also doing all these things, and it's very entrepreneurial in a sense because you're also helping build a company, especially at the early stages. So now that we covered enterprise sales, we covered startup sales. What about in the middle, right? What about medium-sized companies? And so, I'm talking about companies that have 50 or more employees and a couple of hundred. So they might have 100 employees, 200 employees, 500 employees, right? I would consider that medium size, even though it's pretty large. So I never worked at a medium-sized company. I only worked at the enterprise level, and I went to the startup level. But from my experience talking to my friends and things like that, I find that it's kind of a mix between the two. Like when you have a sales team that's like 50 people, you definitely have some kind of product market fit already. People kind of know who you are. There are already systems in place for you to follow, so you don't have to invent everything and build a plane while you're flying. But at the same time, it's not so big and like vast, like a 100,000 person company where you're just this little gear in the machine. You can actually have more impact in a medium-sized company. So from people telling me their experience, what they found is that they like the structure that you get from a media-sized company, but also it's not too big where there's still a strong culture and people still really care about the product and things like that. It's definitely a balance of in between. And also because you are working at a medium-sized company, you're also getting more of a higher velocity because they still need to do a lot of like outbound prospecting because a lot of people don't know who they are. But the good part is, they got product market fit. So it's a lot more easier to send a cold email and more people will respond versus if you work at a total startup, not many people are going to respond because you may not even have product market fit and you may not understand why people buy your product. But if you're like a 500 person company, people clearly understand the value that you bring, right? It's very obvious. And so that is pretty much the different experiences that I had and what my friends have told me from working at a startup, medium size, and enterprise companies doing sales. Let me know in the comments which one you feel best fits your personality. Do you like startup sales? Do you like wanting to work at like an Oracle, like an enterprise company? Or maybe you like something in the middle, like a medium-sized company? Let me know in the comments. And if you want to learn more about how to start and accelerate your sales career, make sure to check the link in the description where I have a free sales training for you guys to check out. And if you made it to the end of this video and you enjoyed it, make sure to give it a like, subscribe, turn on notifications, because I'm gonna be dropping videos every single week, and I'm gonna see you guys in the next one.